Let's get right into this explainer. Today, we're completely demystifying Stoicism. And look, if your immediate thought is, emotionless statues or people just rigidly biting their tongues, you're about to have your mind totally changed. We're going to take this ancient philosophy, something that often feels like a stiff academic subject, and transform it into a highly practical, incredibly potent toolkit for your modern life. We'll be drawing on some really fascinating insights from evolutionary biologist and philosopher Massimo Pigliucci, blending those with timeless Stoic principles to essentially upgrade the way you operate every single day.
I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine a life where success absolutely does not require burning out, pulling your hair out, or staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. What if instead achieving your biggest, most ambitious goals just flows naturally from a place of relaxed intention? I know, it sounds kind of like a fairy tale, right? Almost too good to be true. But here's the thing. This is exactly what some of the most powerful people in human history, like the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, figured out literally thousands of years ago.
Which brings us to our first core concept, the paradox of hustle. We live in a society that never stops screaming at us, does it? It constantly tells us we have to hustle harder, push faster, and just relentlessly fight for every little thing we want. It's this exhausting myth that success only belongs to the people who are willing to completely wreck themselves in the struggle. But I want you to contrast that frantic, white-knuckled grip with what we can call stoic flow. Think about water for a second. When water hits massive rocks in a stream, it doesn't try to punch through them. It doesn't struggle. It just flows around them, over them, and through them. And eventually, it reshapes the entire landscape. When you hold your desires lightly, without all that desperate, anxious resistance, you actually become magnetic to the right opportunities. You literally stop pushing away the very things you want the most.
Okay, moving on to section 2, reason, emotion, and control.
So there's this massive misconception floating around that being a Stoic means just burying your emotions until you become some sort of unfeeling robot. But Massimo Pigliucci's work makes it crystal clear. It is not about suppression at all, not even a little bit. It's entirely about mastering your reactions to those emotions. And what's wild is that modern cognitive neuroscience completely backs up these ancient philosophers. For the longest time, science thought reason and emotion were basically at war with each other. But now, we actually know that the amygdala, which is where our emotions kick off, and our frontal lobes, where we do our logical reasoning, are massively interconnected by literally billions of neuronal fibers. You simply cannot have an emotional response independent of the way you think. If you change your thinking, you fundamentally change your emotional reaction. And that powerful brain connection leads us straight to an incredible tool Epictetus called the discipline of assent. Basically, it's the practice of the pause. Let's say someone walks right up and throws a terrible insult in your face. Your immediate instinctual reaction is just a massive rush of adrenaline, right? Anger, defensiveness, the whole shebang. But what if you use that tiny pause to completely reframe reality? You literally tell yourself, hey, an insult is just air moving around and bouncing off my eardrums. It doesn't physically touch me. If they're right, well, you should probably just take the feedback. And if they're wrong, that is 100% their problem, not yours. By shifting the thought in that brief pause, you immediately de-escalate the entire emotion.
Now, let's take that sense of control a step further and look at Epictetus's dichotomy of control. This is actually the ancient ancestor of the famous serenity prayer, and it is a total game changer for modern anxiety traps, like, say, a huge job interview. Think of it as 2 columns. On one side, you have what is entirely up to you, prepping thoroughly, getting a decent night's sleep, leaving early so you aren't rushing. On the other side, you have what is absolutely not up to you, the interviewer waking up in a bad mood, a sudden subway delay, or ultimately, who they actually decide to hire. When you mentally sort things this way, and you pour 100% of your energy only into the things you can control, not only do you perform way better, but you keep your serenity totally intact no matter what happens.
Next up is section 3, the art of detached desire.
We really have to figure out how to navigate our biggest, most ambitious goals without letting them hold our daily happiness hostage. Because let's face it, the more desperately you need an outcome to go your way, the more power you are just handing over to the outside world. And this brings us to a really cool concept called preferred indifference. Listen, you can absolutely prefer to have wealth, or a great job, love, and success. Go for it. But the crucial piece is making sure your inner peace is completely independent of those things. When you want something without desperately needing it, you instantly swap out a mindset of scarcity for this energy of total, unshakable confidence. You make bolder decisions. You aren't operating out of fear anymore. And ironically enough, that kind of confidence naturally draws the best opportunities right to your doorstep.
And look, when things inevitably don't go your way,
You can lean on this legendary piece of wisdom from Marcus Aurelius. He wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." This is the genius of accepted resistance. Think about an oyster. An oyster doesn't get destroyed by the irritating grain of sand that gets stuck inside its shell. Actually, scratch that. It uses that exact irritation, that precise obstacle, to create a beautiful, highly valuable pearl. It's the exact same for us. Every detour, every single delay, every piece of resistance you face is really just an invitation. It's life asking you to grow into the person capable of handling the success you're actually asking for.
Moving into Section 4, the Stoic Daily Toolkit.
You know, all this philosophy is completely useless if it just stays locked up in your head. As Massimo Pigliucci points out, ethics isn't rocket science, but it absolutely requires daily reps. It's exactly like building muscle at the gym. You can't just stare at the weights and expect to get stronger, right? You actually have to lift them over and over. That's where philosophical journaling comes into play. This was the actual nightly routine of Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself. At the end of the day, you sit down and try writing in the second person, using you to keep a little emotional distance. And you ask yourself 3 super simple questions. First, what did I do wrong today? Not to beat yourself up, but just to analyze. Second, what did I do right? You want to reinforce those good habits. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, what could I do differently next time? Because human life is wonderfully repetitive. That annoying colleague you snapped at today? Yeah, they're probably going to annoy you again next Tuesday. But next time, you'll be ready.
Now, here is another incredibly quick, hyper-practical tool you can use every day. Whenever you catch yourself clenching your jaw, really trying to force an outcome to happen, just take a deep breath and say to yourself, this or something better. Seriously, try it. It instantly releases all that built-up tension of forced outcomes. It's a mental signal that you've done your part, you've put in the work, and now you're just stepping out of the way to let the universe do its thing. Because sometimes that crushing no you just received is actually just clearing the path for a massive, life-changing yes.
Which brings us to our final section, the philosophy of enough.
So Stoicism isn't just a life hack for optimizing your own personal game. It inherently expands our worldview and completely redefines what it means to be truly wealthy and deeply connected. The Stoic philosopher Hierocles talked about this idea called cosmopolitanism. He visualized our concerns as a series of concentric circles. Right in the very center is you, the self, then family, then friends, then acquaintances, expanding all the way out to encompass all of humanity. The daily Stoic practice is to actively, intentionally pull those outer circles inward. You start treating your friends like family, your acquaintances like friends, and total strangers like acquaintances. It's this profound realization that we're literally all in this together, relying on each other to successfully navigate this crazy thing called life.
And ironically, one of the wealthiest men in all of Rome, Seneca, famously wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor." Let that sink in. The feeling of enough has absolutely nothing to do with a specific number in your bank account, and it's definitely not a checklist of material things. It is entirely about how you choose to relate to what you already have right in front of you in this exact moment. When you start operating from a place of genuine, deeply felt gratitude for what is already yours, you shift entirely. You move out of that draining, anxious energy of scarcity and step right into an incredibly powerful energy of abundance.
And all of this leads us to the absolute pinnacle of the Stoic mindset, amor fati, the love of fate. Now, this is not just passive, defeated acceptance. It is a deep, enthusiastic trust in divine timing. It's the unshakable conviction that every delay, every annoying detour, and even every seeming disaster is unfolding exactly as it needs to for your ultimate growth. It means you show up and do your absolute best, but you surrender the final outcome with total grace.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to chew on. How are you going to choose to react to your very next obstacle? Are you going to meet it with that familiar frantic panic? Or are you going to open up your new Stoic Toolkit? Will you take that pause, reframe the situation, focus only on what you can actually control, and just let the rest flow like water? Look, the choice is entirely yours, but if you start practicing this today, if you really step into that flow state, just wait and see how your life transforms.